Hello, this is Mrs. Porter. I'm reading Chapter 2, Jake, of This Is Not a Drill. That begins on page 18. Chapter 2, Jake. I swear, it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, keeping still. And what's up with Emery, arguing with this guy? As much as I want to jump him, I know it's insanity to take on a man with a gun. It's one of those situations where any wrong move can send things in a direction I don't want to think about. My dad calls it the law of unintended consequences. You can't predict the chain reaction of disaster one small deed can set into motion. You have to think before you act. I know it's better to feel like a wuss than to do the wrong thing, but it really pisses me off. This guy coming into a room full of little kids and pulling a stunt like this, what kind of freak does that? These kids are going to need therapy for the rest of their lives. Heck, I might need therapy. This stuff will mess you up. Mr. Stutz, you're going to cause yourself a lot of problems, Mrs. Campbell said. This isn't going to. Just shut up, he yells. Shut up so I can think. I calculate the distance between me and the gun, even though I know it's not worth the risk. I can't do anything that might hurt Emery, the teacher, or these kids. They're watching us, counting on us to help. But all we can do is wait silently for Stutz's next move. Before we started teaching here, little kids really got on my nerves. Like those obnoxious brats in those tennis shoes with wheels that come at you in the mall like flying monkeys from the Wizard of Oz and then swerve around you at the last minute. I freaking hate that. I only signed up for tutoring because on 2 days a week when you're not at the elementary school, the French teacher doesn't really expect you to show up in class. Kind of an understood senior perk. In my book, sleeping in is a privilege, and it's a big incentive to do anything. I didn't think Mrs. Sherrill was going to let me do it at first. She's always on my case for not doing my French homework. I had to turn on the charm to convince her to let me tutor. She finally agreed, but I wouldn't be her pick to defend a bunch of first graders against a job with a handgun, especially after my run-in with the local police this summer. Heck, I wouldn't be my pick either. Anytime a school shooting story comes on in the news, I always think what I'd do if I was there. I want to believe the next day headlines would read, "High school student saves lives of classmates." I always hope I'd be the guy who leaps in front of the speeding bullet to save the beautiful girl, or at least maybe the dude who talks the bad guy down or gets him to hand over his weapon. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I just don't want to be the kid who crawls out from under a desk with pee stains on the front of his pants after the shooter leaves the building. My dad says I'm untrustworthy and irresponsible. It's pretty widely held opinion in this town since my recent arrest, but I'm betting even my dad would agree that I'm doing the responsible thing right now, which is nothing. I've never been face to face with a guy with a gun before, but I know right from the start there isn't much I can do. This dude is well over 6 feet tall, probably 240 pounds, neck the size of my thigh, and ready to back up any threat he makes. It's not something we talk about, but when guys walk in a room, we do this quick, practically subconscious scan of every guy there. If a fight broke out, who could I take and who would I have to watch out for? It happens in a flash, kind of a survival of the fittest thing. It's not like I'm a total lightweight. I'm right at 6 feet myself. I stay in shape for baseball and I work on my uncle's farm in the summer and on weekends baling hay and hauling heavy stuff. But this guy is hardcore, man, in every way. Heck, he probably has "kill" tattooed inside his bottom lip. He's got that crazy roid rage look in his eye, the one that says, "Bring it, you pathetic peon. Give me one good reason to bash your head in with my bare hands." I've always been pretty good at reading people's faces, and what I see in this guy's eyes is darn scary. Bottom line, there's no way to make this right. I've always been good at fixing broken stuff. I'd rather work on cars and take lawnmower engines apart than make straight A's like my older brother. Steven's the brain of the family, and I'm the hands-on guy. At least that's what I tell my dad when he gets on me about grades. But this time, hands-on won't work. I can't MacGyver my way out with a weapon made from an eraser and a rubber band. All I can do is wait for Stutz to show me his next move and pray that his finger on the trigger is steady. The fear in Emery's pale green eyes just about kills me. Emery's solid. She's the real deal. Most girls don't stack up to your expectations in the end. Kind of like those movies everybody raves about. And then you finally see them, you're disappointed. But Emery was every bit as cool as I thought she'd be. Her mind is lightning fast, and her mouth is always curled up at the corners like she's thinking about some private joke. The first time I really talked to her in art class, I sat in the seat next to her and tried to make eye contact. She ignored me. I reached over and picked up the Polaroid camera she was using for a photography project, put my face next to hers, and turned it around to take a picture of the two of us. She still ignored me. Finally, I leaned over and whispered, "So I hear you think I'm a butthole." "I didn't say you were a butthole," she said, turning red. "I said you were conceited, and it's true." She smiled in that great smile of hers that starts as a wicked grin and spreads, and then she turned back to Molly like I didn't exist, which, of course, really chapped my butt, so I quit talking to her. "What's the matter, Biscuit? Got your feelings hurt?" she asked me a few minutes later, grinning. I stopped at Hardee's every day on the way to school for a butter biscuit, and I'd eat it before class started. So I knew she wasn't making fun of me, but I didn't mind. So I knew she was making fun of me, but I didn't mind. There's tons of downtime in art class, so we wound up talking a bunch that day. Emery's really funny, but half of the stuff she says is under her breath, so you have to listen close to catch it. She made me laugh so hard I got in trouble with the teacher and had to stay for detention. I don't even remember what we were laughing about. After school, my buddy Cole said, "I heard you were having a big conversation with Emery Austin. She's not really your type." "You mean smart, Cole?" I asked. "You think smart's not my type?" "She's president of the Honor Society, for God's sake." "What's your point?" "Whatever, man. The thing is, I wanted to be the kind of guy a girl like Emery Austin could go for. A girl who's smart and funny like my mom was before she got sick. Being with Emery reminded me of who I was, or who I used to be. When we lost my mom, I got kind of lost too for a while. I stopped caring about everything. I thought there was no use in being a good person without her watching. It was like the me that used to be was mostly about her, and once she was gone, there wasn't much reason to try. Stutz doesn't move. The kids are completely still, which is a miracle, because usually just getting them in their seats is like trying to nail jello to a wall. Even Mason Mayfield III is stone cold silent, and Lewis is in his chair, motionless. A horn honks outside, and the door slams down the hall somewhere. The hamster suddenly starts going crazy on his little wheel in the back of the room, like he knows something's up. The kids named him Mr. Worley after their favorite janitor who just retired. "Hey, you," Stutz yells at me. "Jake," I tell him my name is Jake. "Yeah, whatever. I need you to empty your pockets." "What for?" I asked. "Maybe you got a pocket knife. I don't want you getting any smart ideas." "All I have on me is some change in my wallet." "Turn 'em out anyway." I pretend to empty my pockets onto the desk nearest me, hoping he doesn't notice the slight cell phone bulge in there. "Don't worry," I tell him. "You won't have any problem from me. I don't want these kids to get hurt, and besides, I'm no hero." That's the understatement of the year. I don't want anybody to get hurt either, kid. I'm just trying to be a good dad. I'm not going to let them take my son away from me. Not my wife. He's getting louder, and some of his words are slurred. And not a bunch of small-town bureaucrats like those people down in the office. I don't need anybody trying to run my life. You got that, Jake? "Well, do whatever we can to help you, sir." Keeping my voice even and looking him in the eye. "Just don't hurt the people in this room. We're not your enemy." "That's the problem, Jake. I don't know who the enemy is anymore. Maybe I never knew who the enemy was. The enemy's everywhere." His voice gets even louder. "You don't know who's trying to mess you up. You can't tell where the shooting's coming from." It's crazy talk, so I keep quiet. Emery's eyes move from the gun aimed at her to Stutz and back to the gun again. The gun changes everything, and there's no way to know how this will end. That is the end of chapter 2 on page 24.